Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of S4. Steven says, see or skip. Today, we're going to go into the vault and we're going to look at a movie that you probably have heard of before called The Wizard of Oz. I'm reviewing this one because it's a lot of people's favorite movie. It's been around for a while and it's weirdly popular. Like, I cannot believe the number of people that when you ask them, what's your favorite movie, they'll say The Wizard of Oz. It was released on August 25th, 1939. It was a movie that used a really cool maneuver of starting off in black and white and then moving to Technicolor when you get to the Land of Oz, which was really cool. It was initially a commercial failure. It was a $2.7 million budget and it only made $3 million. But they re released it in 1949, and they say that its original release date on CBS in the 50s, I think, was when it probably became super popular. And you got to remember, in the 50s on TV, there were only three stations. So you had a 1 in 3 chance of catching this movie. For me, I think it's a great movie, but it's maybe only a 7 out of 10. Okay, fine. I'll give it an 8. But only because it is a really great movie. The plot is pretty much known to everyone, but it's about a girl named Dorothy and her little dog Toto and how they're swept away in a tornado to the magical, some would even say wonderful, Land of Oz. And they embark on a quest to see the wizard, a man rumored to have the power to grant Dorothy's wish, which is only to return home, as well as the wishes of her three friends that she's met in Oz. That's one way to describe the movie. I also saw a description once that I thought was odd despite being accurate. It said, a young girl finds herself in the mythical land and murders upon arrival. Then she teams up with three locals to murder again. Not inaccurate, but it does kind of make Dorothy sound like a serial killer. Now, technically, this film was on point. It actually even got nominated for Best Special Effects, and it won for Best Score and Best Original Song for Over the Rainbow. I really was impressed by the makeup that they had put on Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch of the West, and the prosthetics that they had used on her. One, I think I was in my 20s when I realized that Mrs. Gulch was the same person as the Wicked Witch of the West. So they did a great job of kind of disguising her from her alter ego. But on top of that, they just really gave her this angular, scary, sickly look. And it just worked. The witch is scary. Some of my friends who watched the show when they were young say that they would have nightmares about the witch. Now, I don't remember watching this as a kid. Maybe because my parents wouldn't let me. They were pretty particular about what I was and wasn't allowed to watch. Or it could be that maybe this isn't one of their favorite movies. But a lot of kids will say, oh, the witch was so scary, or oh, the part with the monkeys always scared me. And I don't really have any memories of that personally. Now, I think that the sets in this movie are phenomenal, especially when you consider what they had to work with at the time. As you are moving through Oz, they really do try to give you a sense of leaving Munchkin Land and being in the forest, and then running through the poppy fields, and then creating Oz, which has a totally different vibe to it than anything we had seen before. And then when you get to the witch's castle, oh my gosh, it is so spooky and eerie. I don't know, they just did a really great job. The costumes were incredibly well done. Dorothy just looks like the embodiment of innocence and kindness in hers. And Glinda's costume, I don't know, does anyone else just feel like it looks like cotton candy and a cloud has come together to create this wonderful bubbly feeling? I mean, heck, she arrives in a bubble. So, I don't know, it really got to me. I don't know if it was the casting or the writing, but the story really resonates with people. And we see that because of how much The Wizard of Oz has just permeated our culture. When someone says, if I only had a brain, or someone says, oh no, there could be lions or tigers, people will respond, or bears, oh my. There are just so many things about this movie that are a part of who we are. Not to mention, there have been sequels and spin offs and an animated series and a book written from another character's perspective that's been made into not only a musical, but also a two-part movie. So it really has gone the distance, and you hear it all the time. If a character says, hey, why don't you go see the wizard and ask him for some guts? You know that's a reference to the Wizard of Oz. Now, what's interesting is that people still will say, hey, go see the wizard for, because he kind of didn't really do anything. He was just the man behind the curtain, and he provided only little bits of wisdom to the four people who were seeking his help, despite the fact that they accomplished the quote unquote impossible task that he laid before them. Judy Garland was phenomenal in this. I know that she was pushed to the limit and that this was probably the beginning of her demise in terms of her exposure to both alcohol and pills, but her performance was next level. I think we've all heard Somewhere Over the Rainbow. It always brings a tear to my eye every time I hear it. She's so, so talented. What's interesting, you may not know this, but it's based on a book that was called The Wonderful Land of Oz. This book was actually political commentary about the U.S.'s decision to use the gold standard over the silver standard in terms of our treasury reserve and how we would say that every dollar was worth a certain amount. In the book, she has silver slippers instead of ruby slippers. Now, the studio says they switched them to ruby because silver slippers would have looked silver in black and white, or at the very least gray, and they wanted the ruby red slippers because the red would really pop in this new Technicolor world. But I think the change also had to do with getting away from some of this political stuff and truly just making it an exploration of something else. The movie also makes it seem like the entire experience is a dream, which makes sense considering the number of characters that exist in Kansas that have their counterpart that exists in Oz. Some people would say that was the studio saving money on casting, but I think it was to help drive home the point that yes, this was a dream, and Dorothy dreamed about people from her actual life showing up in her Ozian life as she's working through things. Now, the movie is used to talk about the power between good and evil, the power of the individual, the power of family. So there's a lot of really great themes here. It is a family-friendly movie. It's a movie that one of my bosses said, hey, if you ever get asked what your favorite movie is and some like icebreaker thing with our clients, just say The Wizard of Oz. Everyone has heard of it. It's non-controversial, and then you'll be able to redirect all conversation back to the product without them asking a bunch of follow-up questions about the movie because they quote-unquote have never heard of it. So I thought that that was interesting, and I wondered if anyone else would say that because they wanted to be non-confrontational with their choice of favorite movie. Because I think you could be confrontational when you choose your favorite movie. Not that I could pick one, because, oh my gosh, there's so many great movies out there. Now, there are lots of things I could say about this movie. I probably could talk about the movie for as long as it ran. It was only an hour and 41 minutes. Remember when movies were short? Oh, those were the days. Nowadays, we get these 3.5 hour long movies that are way too long, in my opinion. This tells a really concise story and it moves through at a pretty generous clip. Now, some people say it's very flat in terms of, it's a very basic good versus evil story. There's no complexity there. A lot of people don't like that Dorothy had the answer all along, but that both Glenda and the wizard kept that information from her until the end. Now, if it's a dream, we have to blame Dorothy's subconscious for doing that. But if it's not, then we have these two supposed heroes that have this vital information that are holding it back. I don't know. Is that what you want to see? Now, in addition to some of the other pop culture references I've made, you'll hear things like when someone gets splashed with water, they'll scream out, "I'm melting! I'm melting!" I've heard so many people say, "That's a horse of a different color." So it's definitely permeated into our day to day life. I don't know how a movie does that anymore. Now, granted, when this movie came out, there were fewer movies in general. Now there's so much competition, and it feels like sometimes a movie's a really big deal, and then a couple years later, no one's talking about it anymore. And I wonder why that is and how that happens. If someone told you, "Be gone before someone drops a house on your head," you would know they were calling you a witch. And there was even a little phrase called being a friend of Dorothy. So there's all this kind of hidden code about the Wizard of Oz. Now, I did do some research about the movie itself. There have been these rumors that a munchkin hung themselves on the set. Film historians have gone through the footage and confirmed that no munchkin actually hung themselves on the set, that was a fake story that got spread around. The scene that they think has that, it's actually the shadow of a crane. And then as the film had gotten remastered, the shadow had gotten blurrier over time and then started to look more like a munchkin, less like a crane. The crane initially was supposed to be casting shadows in the forest to make it look a little more alive. Because, spoiler alert, it was a set. They didn't have an actual forest that they were walking through with a yellow brick road. What else can I say about this movie? I don't know. If you haven't seen it, you gotta see it. And honestly, if anyone hates this movie, put something in the comments. I'd love to know who watched this and was like, why does everyone like this movie? Because it's beloved. I love the movie. And it's cross generations. This is something that a grandparent, a parent, and a kid can all sit down and watch together and all enjoy it. It's so sweet and wholesome. The violence in it is like non existent. It has a rating of G, which I can't remember the last time a G rated movie came out. I feel like even kid movies nowadays are coming out with a PG rating. But yeah, it was a great, great movie. So, as I said, it was an 8 out of 10 in my book. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. So, this is Steven signing off from S4. Have a good one.